Welcome to the Gnostic Rebellion. Today we're speaking with Dr. Joshua Pritikin, author of a wonderfully interesting book that deals with a core theme here at the Gnostic Rebellion and the Gnostic book that deals with I'm sorry, and the Gnostic Church of Light. Religion Unburdened by Belief is the name of the book. We'll introduce him in a moment, but you'll find immediately below this video, in the description, you'll find a link for our donation button at uh, PayPal, and this program supports the Gnostic Church of Light. It's an historic building, and we invite you to become part of our historic congregation. We're the first fully owned and operating Gnostic church on the continents of the Americas, and your donations are tax deductible. While you do that, we'll extend this blessing. May wisdom and divine providence increase the unique genius of our congregation and bring us to health, wealth, and increase of days. Okay. Having earned his PhD in psychometrics in quantitative psychology from the University of Virginia, Dr. Joshua Pritikin, during his academic career, contributed to 10 peer reviewed publications and now maintains a practice in White City, Oregon. He runs Estrella Counseling and holds a level 3 certification with the IFS Institute, which perhaps we'll talk about a little bit later. But it is his book, Religion Unburdened by Belief, that brings us here today. And I think what's going on now with, epistemological inquiry into what could be consciousness, what is of the brain, um, and the Descartes mind body problem, which I believe was essentially solved by Roger Penrose.
Yeah.
Are you Now, I forget where I took this from your book, but you said something about scientific epistemological inquiry into consciousness, or you were talking about epistemology in some way.
Well, I do mention Penrose and Hamroth in the book as just as a
Oh, did you
sidebar. Like I
mention
don't.
Penrose?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
because I skimmed over some things, but okay,
Mhm.
good. They were really on the same page there,
Yeah, I think
so to
so.
speak.
Like Penrose in his book some decades ago uh, cited Gödel's incompleteness theorems as a reason, like because we can understand them. Like that Gödel actually came up with those theorems, and like that's something that no formal system can do kind of by definition. So it creates this paradox where formal mathematical systems are like there's no way for them to um, like understand all the claims that could be made and within the system, and that the fact that we can understand these systems would suggest that we're running something that's beyond a mathematical formalism that's
More
well,
sophisticated than that.
yeah,
Yeah.
something
The
something different.
singularity isn't coming.
Yeah, I
Sorry
don't
to
think
our
so.
mechanistic thinkers, you know what I'm saying? We're never going to put our brain inside a robot. Um,
Yeah.
um, that that being so, I think the essential problem has been, and the complaint about Descartes' dualism, and I'm a Descartian dualist. Um, uh, Descartes' dualism, the problem has always been how does the mind, which is independent of the body, make the body work? I say move my hand, and my hand moves. It responds
Yeah.
instantaneously, maybe even before I think about it, or maybe without me thinking about it. I could train my muscles to respond to things. And what Penrose came up with, and a couple of others, is these microtubules in the brain that
Right.
are perceiving the subatomic um, particularity of the brain, of the mind, communicating with this body. The mind is
Hmm.
still localized around the body, It's just not generated by, or even if it's generated by the body, I don't care. The mind is certainly non-localized by the time it becomes a mind, and it has a
Well,
way of communicating.
okay, but PJ, I think you're like you're skipping over some steps. Like what, like to one of the ingredients to Penrose's ideas was the observation that anesthesia, like when we were put under with general anesthesia, that's a clear case of a way to turn off consciousness. Like we're not there anymore. Um, and so
Or is
anesthesia
it turning
becomes
off the
this.
brain?
Well, it's we're
I've
like you're
heard
no
this
longer.
argument, um, or is the chemical turning off the brain?
Well, it might
If
be, but we're
if I
definitely not
drop
conscious.
LSD and I
Yeah.
start seeing green dragons flying down the sky from the sky, are they really flying down? Are they really there?
Um, but that's not the question. The question is that whether you're still there and you are an experiencer, like you still have a sense that you're conscious in that experience. So, um, like whether the dragons are
No,
real
I
or not,
don't. I
like it
don't
didn't.
have any experience whatsoever. I'm as if dead. I'm as if
Um,
sound asleep in the middle of the night. They're just preventing my nerves now from recording that information, getting that information to my brain.
well, wait, you're talking about an LSD or anesthetic?
Well, anesthesia or even LSD. LSD is infusing, a chemical. What do they call it? Synesthesia, where you smell color. Believe me, I've been there. You smell color. I've been there. I've seen the blood flowing through the veins in my hand. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
I've seen God inside of me. He was on his throne.
Yeah, but so the just looking at the structure of your sentences, like I've seen God, I've seen the blood flowing through my hands. Like someone is there to be experiencing that. That means that you're still conscious. So
Yeah.
it's uh, it's like LSD is not the same
But the
thing
truth
as
of my
anesthetic.
experience is not real. So I'm there, but I'm incredibly confused.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, yeah,
Now,
that may
I've
be the
had
case.
genuine spiritual experience on LSD that I think it opened, a very rigid mind up. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, it opened the door and now I know how to walk through that door myself. You know what
Okay,
I'm saying? And the experience I have there is real, and I am a conscious part of it instead of a victim of it. You know what I'm saying? Uh,
okay.
so and I've had surgery. When I go under, the next thing I know, I'm waking up again.
Yeah, so that's the key thing. So anesthesia really turns off consciousness, and you're like unconscious. You're not there anymore.
It turns off my perception of consciousness. They've proved that the brain is still hearing. They've told doctors to watch what they say. Don't make fun of her titties. You know what I'm saying? Because they do pick it up subconsciously. It's all working. They've prevented the brain from registering as much as they prevented the body from transmitting the feelings and the nerve ends. They're still going up there, but they're not registering. They're blocking that registration process in the brain. The drug is
Hmm.
chemically getting in the way.
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure about the details. Like you seem to be making the argument that like there's still some remnants of consciousness that are still active, and that may be true. They, but I think Penrose bases his argument on this observation that anesthesia is a way of turning off consciousness, and then um, we have to understand what anesthesia is doing. Like if we can understand, that's where you get to the microtubules. Is like maybe the anesthesia
Well,
is
that's where his
interfering with them.
idea stems from. I think it was the inspiration for his thought, and I
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
take my ideas from David Nettles or something. I have it on my blog if you're interested.
Okay.
Um, but And I'm not going to sit here and be able to be terribly articulate even about the article I wrote some time back. But I was satisfied with the general idea that we get these microtubules that seem to be able to take the subatomic particularity that involves our soul and get it to immediate react. And that's part of why I'm into the mitochondrial theme of an aggregate consciousness, because
Hmm.
even the baby that hasn't really formulated a mind per se still has that basic mind. And it feels heat and pain and hunger right away, and it responds. It knows how to make itself cry.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's
So it's
already
not a matter
responding
of,
to its environment.
yeah, it's not a matter of the learning that we do since we've been infants, like because infants are already conscious. Like if you've had one, you like that's
Exactly.
obvious.
So, but that's the aggregate consciousness. So,
Yeah.
and most people never develop that much more. They learn how to read the street signs and they can sign their signature on a contract and they can do the paperwork at work. They can read a food can. They won't understand any of the words on the food can, but they can read it, right? And this is as far as their consciousness goes. Um, and we say that's the easy consciousness for a belief structure to come and destroy your soul, because you have the responsibility to build the rest of it. You've got to properly interpret your experience of the world as you grow up and move into the world around you, as you begin to perfect your life in your thoughts and your ideas. And that's what makes soul. And the
Hmm.
only thing that can
Yeah.
possibly become immortal is that.
Mm.
That's your
Yeah,
individuation.
you're advocating for self-development. That's which
Yeah.
makes sense. Like I'm also an advocate for self-development
Well, you
and
were doing it the
autonomy.
first time you cried asking for food as an infant. There was the
Yeah,
beginning
yeah.
of self-development, you know. Um, so with every breath, we build our soul.
Hmm.
And the ancients, the pre-Socratic philosophers, would have told you the same thing. you know, it's in the air. It is the air. The air is one of the sacred elements. So um, your book forces us to look at um, belief and structure in a way like if you were in my congregation attending the service, I would be like holding your book up saying, "Everybody buy this." Here's what we're trying to say in being said in a different way.
Hmm.
And we think what you don't understand about what we have to say here at the church can be perhaps given to you by this book because it's very significant. It makes someone tear at those ideas.
Hmm.
I've contested them where I saw difference, but if you don't see difference, you're still a Gnostic. As long as you're seeing something.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked. I mean that's like that. Um, I'm trying to decide how to respond to your question. Like um, that was definitely one of the goals of the book is to try to put these ideas into very simple, straightforward language. And like I felt like even like I couldn't really do that myself. Like I relied heavily on uh, chatbot like ChatGPT, these AI
Write
tools
this better for me.
to what's that?
Write this better for me, or tone it
Yeah,
down, or
exactly. Like yeah, like
I love
um,
AI as a tool like that. I think it's such a valuable tool.
I mean, and who else is gonna discuss these details about religion with me for 12 hours a day for a year, like to help me clarify my thoughts about it. Like no one is that interested. So,
I am.
so
I
that's
am.
enough.
But for 12 hours, you got to pay me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, it was really invaluable tool. Like, and I mean, it's great talking to you, but these AI tools are, trained on all the leading philosophers and leading thinkers on religion. So it has incredible breadth of knowledge and
But it
like
also
it knows.
trains off of the way you present your ideas.
Well,
So it's going to limit
yeah, I
its
mean,
answers to,
it
it becomes its own echo chamber eventually.
yeah, for sure. Like it doesn't know what it wants to say the way I do. Like I know I want to say a specific thing and it's just like happy to go in any direction. So like it's not like it wrote the book for me, but it definitely helped me with pacing, explaining things at the right speed and trying to organize my ideas better and clarify them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on an article right now, doing exactly that, and I've done other
Mm,
things with it. I use Copilot, and I just love it.
yeah,
It's incredible.
yeah.
Um, it 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 will write shit for you, but just like when you see those AI videos, or even read some of the AI material that's out there, it gives you nothing. You can tell it right away when AI is doing the writing because it just keeps leading you on. I'm going to tell you the truth about this, and the truth is something that has scared many, many people. But we'll bring up the truth as we realize how many people have been scared by this. And it can do that for an hour and a half. You'll never ever get it to finally tell you the truth, until the very end. It'll say, yes, apples are red. I waited for that. Um, so it's a very, when people use it that way, I think it's very obvious. I don't think there's that much we need to be afraid of because the people that would use it like that ain't really contributing much to it to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, when people express anxiety about AI, I think there's really two interrelated things. One thing is that um, uh, they're encroaching on the education that people invested so heavily in. So everyone spends, so much time uh, developing we go to 12 years of elementary school and high school, and then another 4 years of college. Like it's a huge investment of effort, and um, like the AI
And it's
tools are
irreplaceable. It's
what's
irreplaceable. AI
what is
can't
Europe?
replace it.
Well, some of it can, like it's mixed, right? So some of the things that people are trained to do, some of the tasks that doctors and lawyers and software developers do, AI can do it better and faster and with more accuracy, and that's a real threat. And that's something that
Yeah,
we
to
have
that
to come
group.
to terms with. Like that's a huge problem. Like there's economic dislocation, and that there's like
Have you heard
that's
of modern monetary theory? Are you familiar
yeah,
with
yeah,
modern?
I've heard of that.
Yeah.
I
I think it's important, and we're probably going to be moving into it if we're not already. Um, it is loosely tied in with ideas already expressed on minimum basic income. And a country that can print its own currency can really find it can carry as much debt as it wants. The problem is inflation, and it controls inflation through taxation. That's the monetary theory, and I'm not an economist, so I can't
yeah,
critique
I'm
it. And
just
it's kind of new to me. I've only kind of recently come across it. But
yeah,
I was pretty much inspired by a minimum basic income as we are moving out of an era where people will need to go to work. If, there's a lot of things going to be done for us now, even driving cars.
yeah.
Mm.
yeah. No, I admire your interest in modern monetary theory and in thinking about how society has to change to adapt to AI. I don't know, like I'm not an economist. I don't know what's going to happen. So I'm just like, well, we have major challenges with this. So but I don't have any answers. But that's like one fear of AI that makes sense to me. The other fear that, AI is conscious. It's a independent, free
Back to the
thinker that
singularity again.
yeah, like I don't see that happening at all. Like it's just, matrix algebra is not conscious. Like it's just a bunch of, multiplies and additions. Like I don't see how you get consciousness out of that. So I'm
The
definitely on
meta
your,
modern philosophy that's arising is really striving to take us out of the mechanistic worldview. And
yeah,
David Hume proved it so long ago, when causality is not necessarily so. Every causal link doesn't have to be. And so we have a world that is still way too mysterious to us yet. To say that we could quantize the brain and install it in a machine, that some machine could develop an intellect that's still, I don't care if they go into quantum computing. All that's doing is taking the on again and off switch and saying they can both be on at the same time. And um, it's still on and off switches. The brain
yeah.
is not an on and off switch. We've already proven pretty much the non-locality of the brain, of the mind, rather, not the brain. The brain is incredibly low.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's evidence on both sides. I mean, uh, you know, the,
People have
to,
been in surgery, dead on the table, and have been able to describe the whole room and what people were saying. So we know the mind is not fixed with the body, even dulled by um, anesthesia. The mind can still move. That doesn't mean it moves for everybody or that it's automatic, but it has happened. One of the things about your book that really excited me was the idea that the open mind you took towards reincarnation. That there's documented evidence that um, of children who remember past lives, and I've seen some videos on this. But um, for you to say that there's documented evidence, I was intrigued by that. What documented evidence?
well, it's interesting. I got my PhD at University of Virginia, and the group that's studying reincarnation, like that's where they're based. Like, although when I was there, uh, I had no idea, and like we never crossed paths. But it's just like a funny thing in my um, in my
You were on the
history. But
periphery. You absorbed all their ideas by osmosis, right? Because you're there.
yeah, right. So
Every person
later
you
on
ever
in the
met.
book, I reflecting on this idea of reincarnation. It seems like it's mostly about trying to deal with the like death anxiety, and it might be like the like it might be worth looking at that anxiety more directly. Like, why is that anxiety there, and do we need to invent stories about reincarnation to address it?
Well, the death anxiety will never go away. I can intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually really feel something very deep, but still the damn mitochondria in my body, every part of my body is going to tell me I don't want to die.
Yeah,
And anybody that pretends to otherwise is either lying to you, to himself, or both.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
It could be.
yeah, I really believe so.
Okay.
um,
And if you feel like believing in reincarnation is a way of uh, addressing that death anxiety, then more power to you. Like
but I'm not
I don't see
interested in the death
a critique of
anxiety.
that.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the fact that the idea that um, when I first opened my eyes as Paul Ravelli, somebody just died a moment before, and I'm
Okay,
continuing
maybe
that life.
is that how it
We,
works? Like I don't know how it works.
well,
maybe
we've seen the
maybe there was
accounts. There's a
a five
famous
minute
story.
period between.
Yeah, there's a semi-famous story about a guy who died in the Pacific in a plane that was down during World War II.
Okay,
And he remembers flying over the earth and seeing a couple that he thought was nice, and he invested himself with them. Now, he started having nightmares as a child, and eventually it came out, and he remembered they actually took him to a meeting of the then still living squadron, and he knew everyone by name.
yeah, yeah. I mean that
Another
those accounts
child
are
at like
just.
4 or 6 years old or something like that started playing stride piano.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah,
um,
these stories, I don't have an explanation. I don't know how that could work, but like it's very uh the stories are hard to explain. Like I don't, it's very puzzling.
and I don't have the answers either. I'm just fascinated by the notion.
Yeah,
Everything spiritually tells me when I look at my life as being that the only thing of me that will remain will be my work. And the work of what we call the master of the temple is that influential person who, even if people hate that person, they've still taken his ideas. And those ideas influenced a discipline, a tradition, something, an idea, a cultural fix. Um, the guy that invented rock and roll, Beethoven, um, Einstein,
yeah,
the amazing ones and the lesser ones, the lesser known philosophers, the people who still made history and turned the world.
yeah.
And that's becoming a master of the temple, a master of the body. And that trains the mind, builds the soul. And it's only that soul that I can put into the world. Now, it's said that the master of the temple in our tradition, when he proceeds to become a master of the temple, he crosses the abyss to the city of the pyramids. These are tombs, right? He effectively dies. His ego is killed. He's turned into a pile of dust so that he can get across.
Okay.
And when he manifests as a master of the temple, his star simultaneously ascends to the heavens as his soul descends back into the body that was once dust. And what that really says is that there was a transformation of the ego, but that his work now, his star in the sky, his work, has brought meaning and development to humanity in some capacity, right? You know,
Yeah, okay.
um,
Yeah.
and in a certain sense, it's simply the next step beyond the PhD. That's individuation. That's arriving at the perfection of the ego. Asar un nefer, myself made perfect.
I mean, as someone who has a PhD, like I don't think
Now,
it's
your PhD isn't dealing with the discipline of me, your particular PhD. I'm talking about a master of the temple now. Like a PhD, he's going to equilibrate all the function, or maybe like a successful patient, even. He's got the PhD is perfecting the elements of the psyche because you had to finally create a work of beauty.
okay. Yeah, create a work of beauty that resonates more. Like PhDs can be um, very like ordinary, like not focused on personal development. So like if you're saying like PhD in terms of you put a lot of work into it, then yeah, I
Well,
can
as the
I can
spiritual student evolves, right? We talked about um, the emotion and the intellect put into brought into a certain balance and a certain education, right?
sure.
Um, the spiritual student in our tradition um, studies all the technical aspects, goes through holy books, goes through symbols and symbolism, and a lot of the shall we say, what is typically called esotericism and hermeticism. Um, then um, he begins a course of, well, through that, he begins a course of writing and in exploring the psyche through a process called astral projection and
Hmm.
exploring all the different elements of the psyche, flushing them out and dealing with them, which he'll do in a more sophisticated manner later, bringing out all of the petty egos that we have and getting them all formally in line. But as he then begins to master all of that, he becomes a philosophist and he begins to study the philosophy and the great philosophers and the line of Western thought and that kind of thing, and perhaps even Eastern thought, right?
Okay, so
Um,
there is quite a lot of book study
yes,
involved in this path that
report
you're
writing, paper drafting, right? Now, I'm a
okay.
bit of an old school idea in education. And the BA is the undergrad who really is simply still mimicking. He's still taking in information, but he's learning to regurgitate it back properly, being
Yeah.
hammered into developing better thinking skills, that kind of stuff. The master then becomes the master of the discipline. The master now knows the entire discipline with some credulity, right? Um, and so should be pursuing now greater knowledge and should be able to dispose of that discipline in a way that people can understand, right? The paper, we're doing more than a senior seminar now, we're writing a master thesis, right? And
Mm.
so he's demonstrating a mastery no matter what the particular theme is of his thesis. And then the PhD is bringing new knowledge to the discipline, new gnosis to the discipline. Okay. Now, whether we're talking the PhD of science or of medicine or of psychology or what have you, um, we're using that same format in the spiritual school.
Okay, so in your Gnostic church, that this is the process that people go
For
through
the
to
person
to
that
develop
wants deeper
mastery.
study, for the person
Okay.
that wants deeper study. For the
Hmm.
average person, no, they want a place to bring their kids and find sanctity. Right, and
Yeah,
we
yeah.
want to demonstrate that, and we want to encourage their genius by displaying genius, right? The friendly competition. You have a 3 game hitting streak, I'm going for a 4 game hitting streak. I've got to outdo you, and then we laugh over it as we keep outdoing each other, and in the process we become stronger and experts at our thing, right?
Hmm.
So that friendly competition is the idea that we brainstorm off of. My success is going to want you to generate your success. The success of a bunch of us here. You are the people that you associate with. If you learn in high school, if I hang out with the druggies and the dumbasses, I don't really meet very many interesting people, and I'm probably going to become a druggie and a dumbass, right? If I hang out with the A students, I'm going to become a nerd, but I'll get an A and soon I'll be a banker and deny all their mortgages. Uh,
Yeah.
right? And then, of course, why is it that doctors seem to run in families? PhDs of all sorts, academics seem to run in families because you
Yeah.
got the conditioning right. You saw your parents do it. You've been mimicking them right from the start, right?
Sure,
So
sure.
we have, then we could go into your ideas of, uh, interesting inquiry and looking past some of our superstitions, right? Because maybe that one comes up in the family while everyone else is a doctor, this guy decides to become an army medic. I don't know, right? And so is going a completely different path. And that might even lead to a disinheritance, right? You can go there, right? I'm just going to be a poet, man. I'm going to hang out by the sun, and I'm saying we'll be
Yeah,
cool and deal.
if your parents don't agree with your choices, I suppose.
Yes. Well, I mean, again, that's, I was playing on a stereotype there, but the stereotype of authority and the parent who's trying to develop a family into a legacy,
Yeah.
right? We're on Walton's Mountain, and everybody's going to live somewhere along the mountain, right? And they'll name the street after us too.
Mm,
And so we have a system that has over the years even attracted the PhDs and the doctors, and the Golden Dawn was founded by a mortician, a medical doctor, I think, and somebody a little more free spirited, um, and the dues to belong to that temple in England, turn of the century, um, was more than most people make in a year.
mm.
So it was a rich elite club.
Okay,
Everyone that
that's
came.
where that this is like part of the history of your church. Is that what you're
Well,
narrating?
in a sense, yes, and in a sense, no. The history of our
Loosely,
church is
loosely.
I'm the founder. It didn't exist before me. Some of its ideas on modern Gnosticism start with me. Um,
Okay.
some of those ideas I've learned from some great people, believe me, some dear friends. Check out the work of Iona Miller. She recently died a couple of years ago, and a big loss for her, and especially for my wife. For me, and especially for my wife, who was a bit of a mentor to her. Um, and she's connected with a lot of interesting scientists and um, investigative reporters. She's had some work for the CIA. Personal friend of hers. I don't know if you remember Jim Mars from the New York Times. Personal friend of hers.
Yeah.
He wrote some fascinating books on really a secret history of the 20th century, investigating all the big corporations that were really running our society, from the Rockefellers,
Sounds like
onwards. And
important work.
brilliant work. He did it in 3 volumes, and it's worth every page. And
Hmm.
if you started it this morning, you won't stop till you're done. So make sure you have no appointments. It reads that well. I started taking notes in the book. Holy shit. um, uh, but I've had other teachers. Some were flim flam, but taught me great things, and I had to extract. I've dealt with some difficult cults. I still face repercussions from that. I had to
Hmm.
grow and learn through a lot of that. And one thing I came to was a responsibility, a sense of responsibility. Um, and I really started in this whole internet game is like trying to explain to people that there are people out to hurt you in this field. Just because they're in a spiritual field doesn't mean they're in the least bit nice. Some of these guys are rapists and all sorts of other things,
Yeah.
violent criminals. Um, some of these guys are just insane or will drive you insane, and they're considered great spiritual teachers. Let's talk about Samael Aun Weor. This guy puts people in insane asylums. He teaches that you're not going to heaven if you ever had an orgasm. You won't be allowed
Hmm.
in. Okay. You won't get heaven unless you have one. That's kind of where I am. But, if you want to sell me heaven, you know what I'm saying? Send me a 20-year-old that doesn't talk. Uh, but it's such such a responsibility to represent the Western mystery tradition credibly, because it once stood out with great credulity, and it's got to stop being the world of Satan huggers and drug addict nutcases trying to get your money, or even
You're
the
trying.
frauds. I hate these new age guys that are on Good Morning America every other day. These guys are pure patent frauds. As soon as someone tells you you have to lose your ego, he's either trying to get in your pants or to your bank account or both. Because he's trying to dominate you. because he's got an ego. That's why he can tell you you got to lose yours. And
Yeah,
when he wrote that book and started
often.
that new business, that spiritual teaching business, that takes an ego to do that. It takes an ego to say, I'm going to open up a medical practice. Just which one's reasonable. And we got plenty of quack doctors too.
Yeah, yeah, that's a common scenario that you're
What do you call a doctor
describing.
that got a D in med school?
A doctor that got a D in med school. Uh,
Doctor.
doctor. Okay.
There's
Funny.
plenty of quacks out there, and I've learned that the hard way getting old here. Um, and you really have to take responsibility for your own medicine. Um, you have to learn how to consult with your doctor and get your doctor to feed you information. He's not going to give it to you willy nilly, and he won't tell you why you're taking that pill. And if you ask him, you're too stupid. And if they say, ask your dentist about Pro Seneca, um, he's going to say, come on, it's horseshit. 'Cause you should know better. And I don't want to hear that. I want to hear what got my curiosity fired, right? Um, so there's plenty of quacks in the world, and the problem with spirituality is you enter it phase one trying to heal yourself. Just like we said in college, stay away from the psychology students because they're all trying to fix themselves. They're broken. um, and so that's stage one of spiritual growth, though, right? We enter spirituality, and the healing rites are pronaos, they're healing ceremonies, and you're going to be cured of eating apricot pits, and the next step, you start to get a little bit of experience from that, and you start to study maybe a little bit more. You get a little bit of knowledge running, and you're realizing, hey, these belief structures, Christianity is a joke, blah 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 blah. Well, now you enter stage two, the inflation of the ego. Why can't other people see this? They're all fucking idiots, man. Yeah, man, you got to be one of us. We're part of the cool set, right? I know I'm brilliant. I figured it out, right? Um, and there's plenty of blind belief there because you don't know shit yet, but you discover Jesus. Um, Eventually, you mature through continued study, and you begin to realize, there, but for the grace of God, so to speak. There's a reason why I have 2 feet, not one. And there's a reason why I have a greater capacity than another. So just because I figured something out, are you supposed to figure it out? You know,
Yeah, so
and
moving beyond this superior inferiority kind of stuff into um, like it's really a matter of grace. It's a matter of um, seeing what is. Is that what you're getting at?
well, and every life is deep.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? She may be a cheap whore coke fiend, but she went through very deep experiences to get to that kind of woundedness.
sure.
And when you get to the depth of those experiences, what do we often see in successful cases? They begin to rediscover the things that showed them their bliss so long ago, right? You know, um, Aleister Crowley's Diary of a Drug Fiend involves a newly married couple that discovers that heroin will increase sexual pleasure. And so they indulge heavily in it until they become junkies. There's no word for junkie yet in this period of time when Crowley's writing. They didn't know that there was such a thing as addiction.
Sure.
But they knew they couldn't stop it. So they end up going to this famous magician's holiday camp. Remember, it's England. They all have holiday camps. Everybody goes on holiday. Um, and this famous magician tells him, he gets the heroin for him. He says, keep doing it. But in the meantime, he plays the two of them, and he gets them kind of off in their own corners, going through their own therapy, and kind of he becomes jealous. She seems to be succeeding in her therapy, and he doesn't feel like he's succeeding, right? But at some point, he finally discovers his love for building airplanes. And after all the jealousy issues between the two of them getting separated, he discovers that her whole destiny was about helping him in his quest and being his partner. And with that, they came right off the shit. They didn't need to want to stop doing it. They didn't need. Now, this is a little bit hyperbolic, right? But I know with my own cocaine addiction, I was able
So
to
you're,
maintain.
hold on, PJ. So you're talking about this couple. They were addicted to heroin, and then they just found a way to step away from that addiction,
To their
kind of in a
bliss, what we would
spontaneous
call
way.
their true will, what was really that thing inside of them that moved them,
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
you know. I asked a young girl that just started at work. She's leaving in a couple of months to go to college. Her father's a great customer of the store and a pretty young girl. And, I asked her, she told me she's going to college to be a social worker. And I asked her, what moved you to want to go into social work? And she says, I like to help people. And it was the perfect answer. I didn't follow up with anything. Oh, thank you very much. It's great. Um, it was a terribly Gnostic answer, and a young girl that's just barely touching on the world yet. So she's not completely crushed by it, right? Um, that motivation moves you forward. And no matter how that matures, I don't care if she becomes president of CBS, right? If that as that drive matures and as she gains more knowledge and experience and she moves to where she wants to go next and what's moving her. If she makes the right choices, she's going to end up in a place of genius. You
Mm.
can't fail. But that choice may mean, are you willing to pay for that choice? Because society is going to get mad at you. What do you mean? Get the good job, make three babies, buy the 2.5 car garage, and put a picket fence around it, will you? And conform, conform, conform for your boss. Okay? I don't care what he makes you do. You want to bury the chemicals in someone's backyard, bury them in someone's backyard, right? Until you wake up one day and say, who am I? What have I been? I've always did what I was supposed to do. Why do I feel so empty? You know, whereas the guy who says, I'm going to listen to that inner voice and I'm going to go out and I'm going to move myself. Well, he's not necessarily going to make the family. He's not going to land the job on the corporate ladder. He's not going to build that great business, unless that's what he wants to do, right? But they may laugh at him even there. You're going to try to sell Scotch tape? you know, remember the Scotch tape thing on Saturday Night Live, the Scotch tape store?
Um, yeah,
It was a great one. Goes
I
back to the
missed that
70s.
one. Okay.
Um, uh, but that guy may give up comfortable living. That guy may live in the garrets, right? Because he's trying to become a world-class painter. That
Mm.
guy may, work part-time all night long so he can spend his days paying for the piano studio to practice the piano. That guy may get a scholarship so that he can pursue his PhD, and he's got something that he really thinks is valuable. It's bringing meaning to his life. The mechanic who's really gonna
So
walk into
in
that.
these two vignettes that you've narrated, you're trying to argue how important it is to bring meaning to your life. I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's no. When you find meaning, you will find God.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? God will speak to you directly, because you'll find out that you're God. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, I can speak with myself, and I have a dialogue with myself. And I narrate my thoughts. Narrate. A lot of people's thoughts don't narrate. It's amazing to discover. But those of us that are considered more intelligent generally have a narrative going on in our minds. I'll never forget when I discovered the narration in my mind. I must have been about 8 years old when I read Bram Stoker's Dracula. And the whole novel is about diaries. You're reading the different diaries. And I started walking around my house, and he got up from the couch and he went into the kitchen. And soon there was a piece of pie on the table. And it's like, oh, wow. I was trying to shake off the narration from the book, so to speak. But I came to realize more and more through the course of my life that not only did I have narration, but that my mind can work on several different levels. I remember talking to my neighbor. We were talking about, I was just entering high school and he had just left. And he says, one of the things I really love, because I was complaining that my attention span sometimes feels weak. And he says, sometimes I might lose track in one of the layers of my thought, but I find I'm usually engaged when I get two or three like layers to my thought going, and I found that got me a broad interest, brought my concentration up in class. You know what I'm saying? And I found that slow reading led to faster reading, and I found that that was learning to take in the narrative, even if it's a bit technical of what I'm reading, right? Um, so the more we come to study the mind, and not just the psychology, but the way the dynamic works. Can we see the structures that we build culture on? Because the culture frames the paradigm, right? And if we can't see out the paradigm, we're in a certain sense victimized by the paradigm. But if we can stand back and see that paradigm from a distance, what was that great philosopher who wrote how language is, bullshit, and went off to World War II, then came back and said, wait a minute, I was wrong. I forget that philosopher's name. I never read him. Wittgenstein. Uh, Certainly language brings on a resonance because we really think in pictures, right? And so language becomes the layer of explaining the pictures. And the pictures are really symbols. Everything in our dreams is us talking to ourselves, and we're framing it into something else. My wife in the dream is a part of me. Maybe she's acting like my wife in the dream, so she's not a part of me. But other than that, symbols that I express, the weird streak of light bouncing off my shoe, that's a part of me. I wrote that script. What am I trying to tell myself in a pre-verbal sense? you know and I'm the only thing I can do is translate that into a verbal sense. I can write down the image in my diary, and then I can begin to play psychologist couch with it, and just first thing that comes to mind, right? And I can begin to interpret that dream, you know um and that dream is still stuck in the paradigm of me. So perhaps to consult with a psychologist would be to get past that paradigm, because he would see past my personal paradigm, right? So, or she. Um, I've had both. Um, and so as I begin to bring out all these parts of myself, the magician operates with something called evocation. He brings out various spirits into the magic mirror, and then he controls them and dialogues with them. Well, I can bring out the spirit of the artist, and I can have a dialogue where I can bring out the spirit of the rapist, and, recognizing that's a part of me, and have a dialogue with that, and putting each of these motives, as Nietzsche would call them, and perhaps Jung also, putting each of these motives in their proper place in my psyche, right? Dealing with the shadow and the light, and not quantifying them as such, because there's, everything's really not gray, but everything's really light, even the shadow, because it's our strength.